Let's plug in because it's time for the Music is Win podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to another week of the Music is Win podcast. My name is Tyler, and I am your host. I really should come up with like some sort of intro that you guys can expect, but maybe that is the intro. Something unexpected. Either way, I have an awesome show for you this week. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes if you like to listen to podcasts, or of course you can watch here on YouTube. I have a great guest this week, but before I get to that gentleman, I want to fill you guys in on a little experiment that I ran. Maybe you've been seeing a certain guitar player's name sprinkled across my social media over the past few days. That guy's name is John Mayer. It was sort of like an experiment for me to see what you guys like to click on and watch, and I actually learned a lot. The first thing I did was simply create a video of me playing John Mayer riffs, and the title of the video was John Mayer in the title. And that video performed about as well as I thought it would. Nothing too crazy, but also more than some lesson videos that I've made and spent almost a day on, as opposed to about 20 minutes. So it was a sort of exercise in experimenting with the YouTube, I wouldn't say the algorithm, but just the behavior of you guys and how maybe this stuff is promoted. But afterwards I created a video with my wife Bethany, and it was a cover of one of John Mayer's songs, and it was really hardcore production, and I thought it was really fun. But that video didn't perform as well as a video that I put out the same exact day called Teaching My Wife a Red Hot Chili Peppers Solo. And that video was much more raw, and I think the sort of learning here is that in a lesson format, you actually prefer the longer form content and the less edited content. And I think there's always going to be exceptions. The content type is ultimately what's going to dictate what performs the best. And honestly, I'm not concerned with views. I know some of you guys are like, oh, put John Mayer in the title, you'll get views. I don't care about views. I don't depend on views to support Music is Win. There's other kind of mechanisms working to build this business up, but I do want to have you guys see my hard work and benefit from it. So if there's a way that I can make that happen while still maintaining the quality of the content that you enjoy watching, then I'm gonna do that. So I just wanted to let you know my channel is not turning into Music is John Mayer or John Mayer is Win. That was just a little experiment, and I appreciate your feedback and support regardless. Now, let's move along to the featured section of the Music is Win podcast this week. There's a guy named Bosco France, and he is the king of the blues. No, really, he is. He won the Guitar Center Battle of the Blues contest in 2012, and he really is the embodiment of raunchy, angry, modern blues. And I say angry, that's a compliment. He is actually the nicest, most humble, down-to-earth, chill guy I've ever met. And I had an amazing time just hanging out and listening to him. He's a really wise person, and he sort of has this image of a rootsy, guy from Kentucky who slings the slide blues, but he is extremely proficient. He shreds, and just a really, really nice human being. I think I've said that about pretty much everybody I've had on the podcast. Everybody's really nice. And in this business, I know people are like, you'll never make it unless you can stab someone in the eye and not blink. That's not true. Just be good at your instrument and don't be a douche, and the rest will take care of itself. So more about Bosco. He is a guitar player in the band, the Bosco France band, and they are recording right now. You can check out his band in the show notes. He does both finger picking, like chicken picking style stuff, as well as slide, and everything in between. He cites influences that you would expect, like Rory Gallagher or Chuck Berry, but he also cites influences such as Eric Johnson. So he really spans the gambit of guitar proficiency, and that will shine through in the little segments of playing that we do together. Also, he gave me this little bottle slide. I don't know the significance of this slide, but I do know that when I met him at Experience PRS this summer, he just gave this to me. It was the last night, and he just took it out of his pocket, and we were kind of saying our goodbyes. Everybody was leaving the next morning. He took it out of his pocket. He said, "It was great meeting you, man. Here, take this." And I felt like I was being bequeathed with some talisman, like sort of like the pick of destiny, but this is like the slide of destiny. He told me the story. I cannot remember. Maybe I'll hook up with Bosco later on and get the full story and update you guys. But he told me this slide has been around. And so that's what leads me to believe that I will achieve intergalactic guitar oneness with this object. So I'm very grateful to have met somebody like Bosco, who's not only just a demigod of guitar playing, but just such a nice and charismatic and caring person. Another really interesting thing about Bosco is his ability to tell stories, and that obviously translates through with his guitar playing. Everything he says musically is interesting and compelling, but his literal storytelling is pretty cool. You're hanging on every word, so this is an awesome podcast for you guys to expect. We kick it off with him telling the story of his PRS CE22 that he actually ended up buying twice. I'll just leave it at that. We'll start with a little bit of jam to let you hear what Bosco sounds like, and then he actually gives me that guitar I just mentioned to kind of pluck around on and get a feel for, and then he jumps into the story and we're off. So I hope you guys enjoy this week's podcast with Bosco, France.
It just feels right to me, that name. Been told those are the hottest pickups ever made.
They sound cool with fingers too, because like normally you might think of heavier gain stuff, but
I think that's what I like about them, is that when you play with your fingers, you know, they really...
oh man, I haven't. My old custom 24 had this switcher.
I'm a rotary 5 guy. I always liked it. I didn't know what pickup position someone is, so that, because if you get so into it, you're like, oh, they're in the 4th position, and it's like I just want to listen to it. Sometimes most of the time, if I'm really digging something, I'll close my eyes, because sometimes you can be turned off by you know, sensory things like seeing something, and you're not seeing music. You're supposed to hear it and feel it. So I close my eyes and I'm like, you know, like you can get caught like, hey man, that guy's got a lot of scarves on his mic stand. Well, that doesn't affect his vocals. It's a presentation. So
great. So
kind of thing.
Can you started to tell me, can you kind of describe this this instrument, like what it's all about?
Yeah,
the history of it?
I'd love to.
You can take
When I was, I'm aged up a little bit. I'm 41, so when I was coming up, it was Strats and hats because of the all, you know, power of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Mm-hmm. And then everybody wanted a little piece of that, so it was like, well, I'm gonna get a Strat and hat. I probably should have got a hat because all my hair fell out. I just couldn't do it. And then the other spectrum was shirtless with a Les Paul, like Slash. You know, like the 90s kind of thing. And man, I never had the physique for that. You know,
no,
I wish I did.
Me
So, no, this is the first guitar I ever bought with my own money, and I ran into some financial woes, as it were, in like 2004 or 5, and I lived in Nashville. And I went to Paragon Mills pawn shop, and I remember getting my pawn ticket. And I'm like, I'm coming back to get this. And don't ever pawn anything, guys. Just don't. because you'll try to get back to it and something will happen. And I lost this guitar from around that time to 2012. In 2012, I won a contest, Battle of the Blues. It was formerly King of the Blues. And one of the prizes was like $1,000 worth of cables. And they were lifetime cables, and I needed like one to the pedal board and one out from the pedal board and a mic cable. So like after buying 3 lifetime cables, I had $970 left.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I'm kind of scatterbrained, but
no worries.
When I was on the road as a lighting guy with Brooks and Dunn, this is my buddy's phone number, and I want to cover that part up.
Yeah, sure.
I needed to get a hold of him.
There's a phone number carved into that thing.
Yeah, I didn't have a pen, so I took the cord of a little practice amp and just scrawled it in there. And I tell you what, I'm forever grateful I did, because I lost this guitar from 2004 or 2005, around that time. And in 2012, my buddy called me. He's like, "Hey man, did you ever write my phone number on a guitar?"
I didn't write it, I carved it in.
And I knew what he was talking about to me. I was like, "Man, did someone call you? Do you know where that guitar's at?" He said, "Yeah." This was after around the Nashville flood had happened. A bunch of guys had tragically lost some gear and stuff, but they were moving a lot of stuff too to get new stuff. So, and this came out of somebody's closet, and I got it back. And I traded my $970 worth of cable that I had left for this guitar back. So I bought this guitar twice, and I've only bought 2 guitars in my whole life. I bought this one, and I bought a 2007 CE22 when I didn't, for those couple years, I was like, man, it's the best guitar ever.
Nice.
Little different, pickups were different, and I met Paul at a clinic at More Music in Evansville that, they were nice enough to have, and my buddy was like, "You should go, you might meet him." And I was like, "You're crazy." And I went, man, and it's been awesome. Paul is the most gracious. He's been so kind to me.
He's an awesome dude. So let's talk about some of your guitar playing and things. Like, I know you have, you're working on an album, you said. By the way, links in the description for Bosco's music you can check out, and your website. So what would you say the first thing is you play when you pick up a guitar?
I normally, to loosen my hands up, I'm a big guitar fan of all genres, like country, classical, and I do a bad imitation of it all. But that's kind of where I come from. Like where I'm from, the gigs are VFWs and Legions, and not very rock star at all.
Okay.
But they're good people, and they want to hear music, and so you learn those songs. And the other thing too is, where can you play like a George Jones song and then throw some Eric Johnson in it? You stop loving her, just because you can really stretch out. You're at a bar, people, and had I not kept my chops up doing that, then I wouldn't. When I met Paul, I wouldn't have been able to play proficiently enough to make him be like, "Hey, that guy's all right."
Cool.
But I usually warm up my right hand.
You were doing some cool hybrid picking stuff.
Yeah, there's a great, if you don't hybrid pick and you want to learn, everybody knows the G chord. It's one of the first things everybody learns. Your hand kind of feels natural. What I tell people is hold the pick with your thumb and your index finger, And I saw a video of Dave Mustaine when I was a kid. I'm a huge Megadeth fan. And he held a pick like he was making a fist. He was just, like he's saying, like, angry, kind of intense. So I noticed how he got around, so I hold my pick like that, and then I use these fingers. And I'm from Western Kentucky, home of Merle Travis,
Yeah, Travis.
So again, I do a bad version of it. But you try stuff and you sound like yourself, that's a good thing. Because when I was a kid, I wanted to be Paul Gilbert one week. And then I wanted to be Roy Nichols one week. And then I wanted to be Roy Buchanan. Then I wanted to be Reggie Miller, and that never worked out. Horrible athlete.
That's tough.
But no, so I do this thing with my fingers. So I grab the top string of a G, and I pluck the 2 middle ones up. And I'm closing the D, making an E note.
Yep.
And so I'm going to play a G, C, and D with that kind of. something like that. That was kind of horrible. But when I warm up, I'll set a tempo, a metronome, or something, because I find it's very important to practice the time.
Sure.
You know. So you know. So that kind of stuff, and that really, I'm a big, I mean, when I watch a guitar player, look at the right hand. There are patterns we all learn, and you can get on the internet now, and I'm so grateful for it, and for channels like yours, and for guys that put up lessons that I couldn't learn stuff before, and like sweep picking, like that escaped me for a while, or like the Steve Morse alternate picking, not sweep, you know. But like that kind of stuff, and I'm horrible at it, but I still like to try. I want to feel like I know what's going on, or go back and learn something like I couldn't play when I was a kid. Like the other day, I swear I didn't know that Flight of the Bumblebee was recorded with a delay pedal.
Oh,
so
I didn't
the
know
Nuno
that.
Betancourt.
Oh, the Nuno one, yeah.
I didn't know that, so I tried to learn it when I was a kid without a delay pedal.
Just playing a million notes per second.
Yeah. It sounded like it too. But I go back or like when I was a kid, Crossroads was not the Britney Spears movie, but Crossroads with Ralph Macchio.
Yeah.
Johnny, sweep the leg. That movie, you know that. Just trying to, and that was again sloppy, but hey man, it's early. That's what I do though. I try to loosen my hands up, and there's a Steve Vai picking exercise that was in his 10-hour workout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, so I do that. I mean, I'm just like every other guitar player, like we all want to, we see stuff and we're like, oh man, I'd like to do that. But the thing that I'm older now, and I'm pretty grounded in the fact that I'm around these amazing guitar players. Last night I was like talking to David Grissom. There was Davey Knowles, and then there was Simon McBride, and there was Dusty Waring, and there's Emil Wursler, and I'm like, man, I am the luckiest dude in overalls. I'm like the luckiest guy in the world. To get to talk to these guys. Dave Weiner was there. It's like, so man, when you do these picking things, to ask them stuff, and so the right hand stuff, I think, is what distinguishes all those players, because we all owe a debt of gratitude to like guys like Eddie Van Halen, or Eric Johnson, that kind of thing. And then those are groupings of notes in a pentatonic scale, and so all of us know that scale. And then you kind of think about it, we're all limited to the same 12 tones.
We all have pretty much four fingers.
Yeah, and we hear stuff and we emulate it that we like. It's just like art. One problem I have is like, how can there be great rock and roll if we keep comparing it to the old rock and roll? You don't see painters doing that. They still make art. And it's very viable. They make a painting and people love it, but no one's going like, it's not as good as that Van Gogh over there. You look at that, you appreciate it for what it is. I think with music, it's so hard for young guys to really forge a path, because you get compared to this or that. And I think in other mediums you don't. I think that it's great to have a sense of relevance in history. But if everyone did, they would, sing the praises of Chuck Berry.
Wise words.
Greatest guitar. Without Chuck Berry, if you want to be a rock guitar player and know good guitar, it starts in like 1956 with Chuck Berry. I'm not saying guitar does, because there's Wes Montgomery, Charlie Christensen, but all those great double stops, just spreading butter on that ride. I love that stuff. So that's, I'm very scatterbrained, as this interview will show.
Oh no, man! This is all.
I just love guitar, man, so much, and there's all styles. Like I'll sit down sometimes, and, some Merle Haggard. The wisest words I think I got were from a man named Red Volkart, who is a phenomenal human being. He happens to be also a world-class guitar player, but I was asking him when I was like, man, how do you not run out of ideas? He goes, well, if you're good about it, you take a little Roy Nichols in your first solo and you do that. Second solo, maybe I do a little Wes Montgomery. By the last solo, I'm Jimmy Page. And so he builds, and there's a whole art to that. There's an art to playing long solos and building. A la Warren Haynes, Derek Trey, those guys are so phenomenal. And then there's guys that get in and get out and get to check. Elliot Eastman is the best. The Cars guitar solos are absolutely phenomenal pieces of art within the song. It's like when you listen to a Beatles song, you're like, oh, that bass line's its own song. His guitar solos are just...
If you can sing the solo, it's just like, that's the thing. I'm still searching for that, that voice that you develop on the guitar is like, when you find the right notes and it all just comes together. It's one to compose it, another thing to just hit it on the spot.
Man, it's hard because you're around other guitar players, and there is even when there are no egos underwater, Jimmy Herring. There are egos on the stage, and like if I'm the band leader, then I expect, and not in a mean kind of way, but I'm the band leader. Certain people look at me for things, certain stops, starts, and I want to be able to do those things. But also, when I solo, I want to be free enough to not be encumbered by, have I got to tell the keyboard player that we're going to a 2, or I want things to be tight. But I never play guitar the same way. I don't. I understand when people do, but if you watch any videos, I never play the solos ever the same way, even in my own songs.
Well, let's play some now.
Rockin', dude.
So awesome to meet you.
Awesome to meet you, man.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Yet another week of the Music is Win podcast in the books. Make sure to check out Bosco's awesome band and all of his endeavors in the show notes. His website, boscofrance.com, is where you want to look. And I'm going to see you guys next week. By the way, I mentioned this last week, but you want to leave a review on iTunes of this podcast. Just, a little text review. This is a great podcast. This podcast is terrible. Hopefully you don't say that. But if you want to leave a review on this podcast, something is coming soon that is exclusively for those of you who leave reviews. You will be eligible to perhaps attain a very nice piece of gear. So I'll just leave that ambiguous for now. Thanks a lot for listening to the Music is Win podcast. Subscribe on iTunes. Check it out here on YouTube. No matter what you do, just remember one thing. Keep shredding.